Candida auris infection. ICMR releases guidelines for Candida auris infection and treatment. The killer germ, a fungus called Candida auris, has showed up in countries as far apart as Australia and Canada, Venezuela and Japan over the past few years. It has set alarm bells ringing because it is often resistant to multiple antifungal drugs. What is Candida auris and why is it worrisome? Candida auris is an emerging fungus, multi-drug resistant yeast that presents a serious global health threat. Patients can remain colonized with C. auris for a long time, and C. auris can persist on surfaces in healthcare environments. This can result in spread of C. auris between patients in healthcare facilities. Public health authorities in several countries have reported that C. auris has caused several illnesses in hospitalized patients. Infections caused by C. auris often do not respond to commonly used antifungal drugs, making them difficult to treat. Also, C. auris can persist on surfaces in healthcare environments and spread between patients in healthcare facilities. C. auris is difficult to identify with standard lab methods. It may have had a role to play in the development of its resistance. Healthcare personnel oblivious to it for long continue to prescribe antibiotics, giving the organism time to acclimatize to the medication. C. auris is known to cause outbreaks in hospitals where it finds vulnerable individuals. Patients who have a long stay in an ICU, have serious medical conditions, and who have previously received antibiotics or antifungal medications appear to be at high risk of infection. Spread. C. auris can be spread in healthcare settings through contact with contaminated surfaces or equipment, or from physical contact with a person who is infected or colonized. Basically, C. auris can spread in hospitals, targeting people with weakened immune systems. Healthy people usually don't get infected with the fungus, yet more research is required to further understand how it spreads. Why is multi-drug resistance a problem? The increase in resistant organisms is fueled by overuse of antimicrobial drugs, not just in healthcare settings but also in agriculture. As more organisms evolve way to survive commonly used drugs, treating infections become more difficult. This increases the risk associated with hospitalizations and surgeries. How can the spread of C. auris be prevented? Meticulous attention to infection prevention and control, including good hand hygiene, is critical for everyone, including healthcare personnel and healthcare facility visitors. It is important that healthcare personnel strictly follow infection prevention and control measures, such as the proper use of gowns and gloves. When visiting a healthcare facility, visitors must follow facility directions to prevent the spread of infection. Finally, appropriate and effective environmental cleaning and disinfection by the healthcare facility is a key part of infection prevention and control. So, is this treatable? Most C. auris infections are treatable with antifungal drugs. However, some C. auris infections have been resistant to all three main classes of antifungal medications, making them more difficult to treat. C. auris infection often goes unnoticed, and its resistance to drugs makes it even more difficult to treat. Moreover, it is difficult to identify with standard laboratory tests, increasing the risk of mismanagement or misidentification if not diagnosed properly. As per CDC, more than 90% of C. auris infections are resistant to at least one drug, and 30% are resistant to two or more antibiotics. And other prominent strains of the fungus Candida have not developed significant resistance to drugs. said the CDC. Finding a cure for the infection is now a matter of urgency. So what are the precautions and treatment? The key is to prevent the fungus from spreading, so the management of the infection is hinged on isolation of the patient, ideally in a single room, with strict hand hygiene. Everyone who has come in contact with a patient should be screened for the fungus, and all equipment used for the care of the patient should be cleaned every day in accordance with clinical care recommendations. Guidelines for treatment say that only when there are symptoms of an infection should the patient be given antifungus such as caspofungin and micafungin. What are the signs and symptoms of C. auris infection? Symptoms may not be noticeable because patients infected with C. auris are often patients in the hospitals with another serious illness or conditions. Symptoms can vary greatly depending on the part of the body affected and can cause different types of infections such as bloodstream infection, wound infection and ear infection, etc. Doctors say symptoms can include fever, body aches and fatigue. How fatal can C. auris infection be? Nearly half of patients die within 90 days of being diagnosed with a fungus. In most cases, patients who have died with C. auris had other serious conditions that increased their risk of infection. Prevention and control measures for C. auris: placing the patients with C. auris in single rooms and using standard and contact precautions, increasing emphasis on hand hygiene, conducting surveillance for new cases to detect ongoing transmission, screening patients to identify C. auris colonization is a vital part of infection preventing control.